Violent Night out in theaters, new action comedy starring David Harbour and John Leguizamo. It's a film about a jaded, cynical, exhausted Santa Claus, the real Santa Claus with magical powers, who gets stuck in a lavish mansion during the Christmas Eve night as armed robbers invade the place to secure the family's money. And though initially wanting nothing to do with the whole situation, circumstances eventually force Santa to fight his way through the goons in violent ways, as the title suggests. Essentially, Die Hard with Santa. So this film could have gone either of two ways. Either great fun or absolute horseshit with nothing in between. Surprisingly, at least to me, it goes the former route and is genuinely entertaining. And that is for three reasons mainly. One, David Harbour is charismatic as hell, and playing an aging, grumpy, reluctant hero is sort of his thing, as seen in Stranger Things. Violent Night is another great example of this type of role for him. Harbour is very fun in the Santa role, both in terms of acting and the sort of physical performance in action scenes. And action is the second reason for the movie's success. It's genuinely great, properly brutal and gory, but crucially very well shot and performed, which means a lot of the time we see perfectly what is going on instead of experiencing just a series of shortcuts with close-ups. The fights are incredibly physical and often use the elements of the surroundings, stuff in the house, various Christmas-themed props and so on. So huge plus for this one. And finally, reason number three for the movie's success is humor. The film really is quite funny, and that goes for all of its aspects pretty much. I mean, Harbour's grumpy character and the ridiculous situations he finds himself in. The robbers and their sort of exasperation with a fucking Santa Claus spoiling their plans. The family, who is mainly comprised of total assholes, almost trying to outdo one another in who is going to be more of a terrible person. Then there's this fantastic sequence ripped straight from Home Alone, which, yes, steals a lot from that movie, although moving it into a more brutal category for adults, definitely. But it does the stealing quite well and winks at the audience, saying, yes, we know what we're doing. It directly references Home Alone. And at another point in the film, by the way, it also references Die Hard. So it's very clear that the filmmakers knew what they were doing. And in regards to the Home Alone's booby trap scene, I was howling during it. It was really very funny, again, in pretty violent ways, and you know, it almost made me want to revisit Home Alone itself as well. One last thing I enjoyed is the use of Christmas music during the most brutal and bloody fight scenes imaginable. The juxtaposition is great, and somehow it doesn't get tired even after several times. Now, the movie is not perfect, unfortunately. There were a couple of things I did not enjoy. There are definitely pacing issues in the middle, where the movie suddenly slows down for way too long, and in general I think we spent a little too much time with the family, making the film itself a bit too long. I mean, the runtime is 1 hour 52 minutes, which is quite long for this type of movie. Then there are some strange editing choices, and by that I mean both the scene order, and again, it's a little strange in the middle. For example, suddenly we learn that the little girl escaped to the attic, but there's sort of no scene showing us how that could possibly have even happened. So some of the transitions are a little bit jarring, but also it can happen within a scene as well. In the final fight, which takes place outside, John Leguizamo's character has an advantage because he's shown directly to the camera to have these boots with, you know, these special winter metal spikes on them for use on ice. But the problem is he definitely didn't have them before. We don't know how he gets them. We don't know where he got them from. And then even within that single fight scene, there are shots of him suddenly not wearing those spikes anymore. And then in the next shot, he has them again. So clearly some, you know, continuity and editing mistakes there. And finally, I wasn't entirely sold on the way the family plotline goes. I mean, they're established early on to be total dickholes, and I was sort of anticipating that they, along the robbers, would get some sort of comeuppance by the end, or all get violently murdered. And really, sort of none of that happens. So it felt a little bit like a waste of time of setting them up in this way. Having said that though, I'm willing to forgive and wave away all of those faults, because when the film works, it works very, very well, more than offsetting its flaws. It's funny, it's brutal, it's got great action and humor, and it's generally a very entertaining Christmas flick for people who don't necessarily enjoy Christmas rom-coms and want to, have fun with something else instead.